Hello everybody, today we're going to be taking a look at this question called parentheses score calculator. It's a problem with a 69% at clear rating on LeetCode. Let's try and first understand what the question is asking for, because the wording and the type of question this is can be a little bit tricky. Write a function solve, so the name of the function has to be solve, that calculates the score of a balanced parentheses string. The rules of the scoring is that when you have two parentheses that are connected, that makes up 1 point. If there is x, where x is a subset, or a sub-expression, so a parentheses inside of a parentheses, that doubles the score. So for example, this, since this inner parentheses is worth 1 point and it's inside of another parentheses, that doubles it, so that's 2 times 1, which would be 2. And then xy is equal to the score of x plus score of y, so that means if these are side by side, each of these are 1 point, so they are just added together instead of doubled. So 1 plus 1, 2, instead of 1 times 2 in the nested parentheses. So we have a longer example here to understand better. So in this example, we see first there are two outer parentheses. So we could just know that everything inside here is going to be doubled. Now this first parentheses is going to be 1 on its own, but then this one is going to be 1 inside another one. So that's 2 times 1 plus 2. So this is 2 times 1 plus 2, because this is 1, and then this is 2 because it's going to be 1 times 2. So 1 times 2, and that whole thing is doubled, so this entire inner thing is 3, but that's doubled because of the outer one, so it's a total of 6. So you could pause and try to figure out it on your own. We could do one more input just to be clear on this. So for example, if we have two parentheses side by side, that would be 2, but let's say we have this one in here, then this would be 1 plus 2, and if we had another one inside this one, what would this one be? This would be 1 plus what's inside this one. This one is going to be 1 times 2 times 2, so this entire thing would be 4 plus 1, so this entire thing would be 5. If we had another one inside here, that would instead be doubling this whole thing, so this would be 2 plus 1, that's 3, 3 double the whole thing, 6, plus this one, that would be 7. So hopefully you guys kind of understand the pattern behind this. Hopefully I also got this right, but that's essentially how this kind of problem is asking for. So now how will we go about solving this kind of thing? Well, for starters, what we want to figure out is we want to figure out whether a parenthesis is closed or not. And there are different ways to do this, but a common way in some of these other parentheses questions you might encounter is storing them in what is called a stack. The reason why we would use a stack is because when we're using a stack, we can easily see that, oh, there's a left parentheses in, so we have to keep track of that. And then whenever we see a right parentheses, we can pop that stack out of the loop to essentially close that single parentheses. So that is a common method that we're going to be starting to use. And then what we can do is through that loop, once we see the thing, if we see a left parentheses, we'll add it to the stack. Otherwise, we're going to pop the parenthesis out and keep track of the score based off of where it is. Because if we see, for example, the stack of the last element, let's get a first a code to explain the first part. So we're gonna have a function called solve, and then we're gonna have a string variable. So let's say we're gonna call it s for now. So obviously the output is going to be the input is going to be the string of the parentheses like this, and the output is going to be an integer. But first, let's create a stack with the base score. So there's going to be a base score of 0. And we'll get to what this is in a second. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing this in a single loop for car and s. This is looping through each character in the string. Now, like I mentioned, we're going to say that if the car is going to be a left parenthesis, if we see it's a left parenthesis, that means we want to add it to the string, add it to the stack. So stack dot append 0. And this 0 is referencing a score. So it is going to be a left parentheses, but instead of appending the parenthesis itself, we're going to be appending it to the score value. Otherwise, if it's not a left parentheses, it's going to be a right parentheses. So what that means is that what we're going to be doing is we're going to be popping the last element that we put in, because that means that once we found it, we know that there's going to be a match somewhere. But the match doesn't necessarily mean that it is like a direct thing. Like, for example, we don't know that the last left parenthesis and the right parenthesis is going to create a score of 1. However, what we do know is that if the score is 0, that means that it is a parenthesis that is right after. So for example, what we're going to say is that right now there's only a 0 in the array. However, if there's like, for example, if we start the loop and then we already see like a 0 in the list, that means there was a left parenthesis connecting to the right parenthesis, so that we can immediately put out 1 point. However, if it's not, we're going to be instead doubling it. So what we're going to be doing to exactly get all of that is we're going to be using stack of -1. And stack of -1, if you guys don't know what the index of -1 means, basically -1 in Python is it's going to be the last element in the list. So the last element that we're going to be popping instead. So once we pop this, pop the last element in the list, what we're going to be doing is this initial thing, which represents the first parentheses. We are going to double the score, but only, so it's going to be 2 times last. So doubling the score that we just popped and of 1, because it could either be 0 if the last thing we popped out was going to be a 0. Doubling the score would just make it 0, so that wouldn't do anything. However, it could also be 1 if the parentheses are just connected to each other. So that's why we're going to be adding up max and 2 times the last stack. And this is all going to be done in the first element of the list. So it starts out as 0 as the score, but it could, once we add a parenthesis in, a right parenthesis in, we're going to be either doubling it or just adding 1 to it. So, for example, in a string like this, what it would do is it would just simply add another parenthesis to the end of the list, and that would see that the last element, since we appended a 0, we're going to be popping out that 0, and then we're going to be choosing between 2 times the last one, which was a 0, and 1, but since 2 times the last isn't the thing, it's going to be a 1. If we add another, if, for example, we had this instead, what it would do is that the first character, it would be a left, we're going to be appending a 0 to the stack. It would be it's a little bit hard to do something like this, but if we say like 0, and then it would append another 0, but then once it got to this place, what it would do was instead it would simply pop out the last element, which is going to be a 0, and then it's going to be setting the initial value, the last value, which is this value, as 2 times the last, or 1, but it's going to be 1. And then once it reaches the last one, that's when it doubles the score, because it sees the last one. We append the last element, we'd pop out this last element, and then it would just set the last element in the stack to max of 2 times the last, which since the last one is 2, 2 times 1, it would be a 2 in this. So that's how it accounts for the double parentheses situation here. So it's a little bit of tricky code that you probably wouldn't be able to get on your first try unless you really thought it through, but this is the most efficient way to do the entire code just by going in one loop. And now at the end of this thing, we're just going to be simply returning stack of 0, because there's only going to be one element in the list. So for example, in this thing, it would be 2. And yeah, that's basically the entire code there. We're a bit over time, but actually no, we have plenty of time. Hopefully the explanation was mostly clear on how this logic exactly works, how the stack works, and how it's continuously keeping track of the score by either doubling it or just increasing it by 1 if they're next to each other. Now we can test the code just to see if it's working. So let's print out solve, and we're going to input the string that we want to see. So let's do the example one. If we have a string that looks something like this, then you see according to the output here, it should be 6 because it doubles the inner ones, and then it adds 2 times 1 plus 2. The entire thing is going to be 6. So that is the output that we are going to be expecting here. Let's run the code, and sure enough, we get 6. We can test the code by saying what would happen if it's a blank thing. This one would return pretty much, it would return 0 because it's an unsolvable thing. The stack would just remain as a 0 value. But however, if we added another one, we know that this entire thing is going to be 6, and then we're just adding a single one to the side. So that means the total should be 7 now. So let me save it. And yeah, it would be 7. So yeah, that's essentially how this type of code works. We can keep testing it, but the logic is pretty sound. This one, I think I might have messed up actually when I was talking about this one. This one would be, no. I think I just didn't mention it. This would be, this entire thing would be doubled, and this would be 1 plus 2 plus 1. So this entire thing inside would be 4. The entire parentheses around would make it 8. So that's how this kind of code would work. Hopefully earlier in the video when I was trying to explain it, I didn't mess up any of your guys' reasoning. But yeah, that's essentially how this code works, how to solve this type of problem. It is quite a more complex problem than what we have previously done, but hopefully you guys understood the explanation of how we use stacks and the parentheses method to continuously keep track of the score and double it or set it to 1 when necessary. So yeah, that's pretty much it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.